Brooks Sr., your host, and this is Community Forum. We have an exemplary panel for you this evening. We have Megan McKenna-Mejia. She's the Executive Director of Mano Family Resource Center, Round Lake Park, Illinois. And we're going to be talking about the challenges of immigration. Ladies and gentlemen, Lake County, as you know, is approximately 750,000 people. And we air every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. on Channel 17. We have with us, to highlight the show, is Nina Stokes, the co-host for our Community Forum. And greetings, folks.
Greetings, Hi. Dr. Brooks.
We're very happy that both of you taking time from your busy schedule. Nina, you making the ratings go up high, you know, as you be on the show, co-hosting the show. And Megan, we want you to tell our listening audience, before we get to our favorite topic, a topic that's questioned all over the country.
Sure.
Immigration.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, we want you to tell our listening audience a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Sure. So thank you for having me, first of all, to both of you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. As you mentioned, I work at Mano Family Resource Center, which is a community center in the western part of Lake County. Mm-hmm. And for me, as a person, a professional that's been in this field for about 12 years now, I've actually been connected to immigrant communities a little bit longer, actually since I was a young person. I am not an immigrant. I was born in the United States. But as a young person in high school, I actually went to a high school that was really focused on social justice issues. And so as a part of required community service for graduation purposes, we had to select a trip or an activity or something to be exposed to issues of social justice and also to perform some kind of community service. Mm-hmm. So to my parents' dismay, I decided to go abroad, kind of signed up for it and let them know after.
Right.
And I ended up going to El Salvador, which is a small country in Central America, which some of the viewers may know had a lot of internal strife in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, a civil war that went on for many years, and many people lost their lives as a result of that war. And so as a young person, I went down there really knowing nothing about it. I knew that there were a lot of people who had left El Salvador to come to the United States as immigrants, but I didn't really know as a young person what that meant or why people left. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to El Salvador, I learned about the struggles that these communities had faced and really what they had fought for justice in their community and for democracy, and learned directly from people who had been involved in that fight. And for me as a young person, 17 years old, it was just world shattering, kind of really formed my worldview from a young age. Mm-hmm. And so from that point on, I decided to go into studying political science in college at Truman State University, where I studied international development policy, and I specifically focused on Latin America, which is where El Salvador is. Mm-hmm. And then after I graduated, I decided I really want to go see the world and kind of continue to learn through direct experience. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, I actually got a job as a teacher in a bilingual school in Honduras, which is actually a neighboring country to El Salvador in Central America. And so I spent 2 years in Honduras in actually a community that sends immigrants to Lake County.
Ah.
Yes, and so I'm not originally from Lake County or Illinois, and so the first time I ever heard of Waukegan was actually in Honduras, because somebody said, "You're from the United States, have you ever been to Waukegan?"
Wow.
And I said, "I don't know where Waukegan is," which I now live in Waukegan.
Right.
So people told me a little bit about their experience in immigrating to Waukegan and why they went, how it was here for them, and that their family members were still here. And so it was a really eye-opening experience for me to see the communities where people come from to here, if that makes sense. And so when I came back from living in Honduras, I got my master's degree in urban planning, specifically focused on community development at the University of New Mexico. So I worked close by the border, and at that time I was working with an immigration attorney as like a job during grad school, but that was also another eye-opening experience because it was my first time contact with our immigration system and immigration policy. And so for me, that was also this eye-opening experience of actually how complex immigration policy is and how hard it is for people to gain status, immigration status. And so then after I finished that, I came to Waukegan, and I worked at Lake County government, doing affordable housing programs, public service programs through grants that the county receives through the federal government, always focusing on work in Waukegan, which obviously there's a large immigrant population in Waukegan. And then eventually I ended up at Mano, and I had actually worked with Mano when I was at the county as well, so I was already familiar with the great work of Mano. And when the job opened at Mano, I felt like it was a really great fit. And so I had people kind of urging me to apply because it was a good fit, and I've now been there for 16 months, and so the rest is history.
Tell us about immigrants. Now, a lot of people think only Hispanic population are immigrants, but
Sure.
What is the gamut of immigrants?
Well, every country in the world, really, right? And I think that, with the exception of indigenous populations or people who are the sons of slaves, most of us came here as immigrants, right? And so my family's no exception to that. So my family originally, generations ago, came from Ireland,
Okay.
because they were facing hardships in their country. There was, famine, there was persecution based on religion, things like that. And so they left with nothing, just the clothes on their backs, got on a ship and went across, the Atlantic Ocean and arrived here, and also, faced a lot of discrimination when they got here and had to work hard and things like that. And so I think that one of the things about immigration is that it goes in cycles. And so kind of depending on what's going on in different parts of the world or different economic conditions, we might see at any time, a lot of immigrants coming from one country or one region or the other. But I mean, I think we can all agree that the United States is one of the greatest countries in the world, right? And that there's this place where there's freedoms and democracy, and people yearn for that.
With all of its challenges,
that's right.
It's still the greatest country.
That's right. And so people know that, and they know that they can come here, and they believe in the freedom that our country offers. And so we really do have immigrants from across the world, here in Lake County even, right? And so we'll see in Waukegan and Round Lake, there's a high concentration of people from Latin American countries, but generations ago it was Slavs, it was Lithuanians, it was Germans, Polish, exactly. And so it kind of goes in cycles. When you get closer to Chicago and Cook County, there's a little bit more diversity in terms of different regions in the world. But certainly there's people in Lake County from countries across the world.
So we can say that we all came over here on different ships, but we're in the same boat together now.
That's right. That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
Right. Because we have slaves came over here, brought over here.
That's right.
They're probably the only group that was brought over here,
yep,
right?
I think
the
that's
others
accurate.
Came to will. Well, in addition to that, we're going to get into deeper, but social justice that really caught your eye,
right.
and now so became a part of you. And why is social justice?
I think it really, for me, goes back to, certainly I was raised Catholic and in a community that really valued social justice and really valued this idea that people should be treated equally and loved no matter who they are or where they came from or whatever. So I think that was something that really, from a young age, my parents and also the educators that I worked with through primary school into high school really influences that. We all should fight for justice because if there's injustice somewhere, then that can be a threat to justice anywhere, as Martin Luther King. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, any injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so if today we're fighting for justice for one cause, it's it could be a different cause the next day. But the point is that people are equal, and they deserve equal treatment under the law.
Well, we talk about, you mentioned equality of opportunity is all. In other words, not just give me something here, but give me an opportunity to achieve.
Well, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about our country is it's full of opportunities, right? And so I think that everybody should have the opportunity to get a better life, to work hard and to have opportunities for betterment of themselves, but also of their families, the generations to come after them. And I think that we can all agree that in the United States that the idea is that if you work hard and you play by the rules, you should have opportunities, right? And so I think that that's certainly one of the drivers with Mano is that we really do try to connect people with opportunities so that they can strive to be better and so they can provide a better life for their family, because that's why immigrants come here, is because they want a better life, they want to work hard. And so we try to help facilitate that.
Okay, what does Mano stands for?
Mano is Spanish for hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
And so we say it's about a hand up, not about a hand out. And so it's about helping people when they need a hand.
Is it only limited to the Hispanic community, or do you help all people?
We help anybody who comes through our door, for sure. It was started in 2000 by the former chief of police of Round Lake Park, Bruce Johnson, and the former mayor of Round Lake Park, Isla Bauer, and state representative Mark Bobian Jr. And so what they kind of came around this idea of realizing that there was changing demographics in their community and something needed to be done in order to bring everybody together, right? Because they saw that there were a lot of immigrants coming in, they were becoming isolated from community institutions, and so they wanted to connect people. And so it was originally founded in response to changing demographics, which for the most part has been Latin American immigrants. But I would also say that there's a lot of, there's some transition even now in the demographics of the Round Lake area, and so we've seen an increase of non-immigrants coming into Mano for assistance, especially with the Affordable Care Act, some of the other kind of public benefit services that we offer as well, and we really help anybody who needs the hand up, right, that comes through the door.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned about, I know if they find out you coming out of the country, find out you're coming to Illinois, go to Waukegan. But what are some of the primary challenges that the people face when they do come to Waukegan?
Sure, that's a great question. So immigrants come typically one of two ways. They either come with permission or they don't come with permission. And so that goes back to their immigration status, right? And so some people are either born with a citizenship abroad or something like that, and they can just come. Other people are related to U.S. citizens, and so those U.S. citizens can apply for them, and so they can have residency, or some people can apply for a student visa or a tourist visa, things like that. And so they're able to come into the country legally. There are other people who don't have that, but
they call undocumented.
Undocumented, exactly. And so there's other people who come in a way that's not documented or without permission, basically, without legal permission. And so that's one of the primary challenges that people have. If they are undocumented, that's a significant challenge, because that basically cuts off a lot of other opportunities for them, because they don't have a social security number, they don't have the legal right to work, they can't get student aid to study, for example, and they're always kind of under the constant fear of being picked up by the police or by immigration and being deported. And what we've also seen too is that a lot of people end up having children here, and so their children are U.S. citizens, but the parents are undocumented, and so they live a lot of times with the stress of at any time they could be separated from their families, which is a significant stress for any parent, right? Another challenge that people come in typically with Latin American immigrants, a lot of times people come who have very low education levels, because the educational opportunities are not really that great in Latin America in many cases, particularly in rural areas. And so we see people come in with a variety of different educations, but some people do come in with like very low education, like primary school education, or didn't finish high school, stuff like that. And then, which adds to that more complication is that they typically don't speak English. And so there's this other challenge of being able to connect with either more educational opportunities or even job opportunities because of the low educational attainment and then the limited English proficiency. And so those are significant barriers for people to be able to integrate themselves into their community. Yeah, and so I would also say, in addition to all of that, you know, when you come from a different country, you have different kind of frame of reference of how the school system works, or how the healthcare system works, or how the government works. And so people aren't oriented to how those things work here, and so sometimes they don't know how to access healthcare or access their child's teacher, or they don't know what they can do politically in terms of like political freedom and stuff like that, because they come from countries where there isn't political freedom, things like that. Or they come from countries where the police are involved in crime, and so they don't trust the police. So those are some kind of cultural challenges that people face. And so Mano, we try to reach out to those people and help orient them to the system so that they can be more actively a part of their community.
As far as trusting the police, it's not only the immigrants not trusting the police, but it's
That's right.
it's the average student now is getting to the point now
Right.
that they don't trust the police in this country. But that's another program, though.
Yeah.
You know, that we get
That
put
is
on
another
all the time,
program.
you know. But we a few years ago, the issue was Dreamers.
Right.
And what, just a little bit about the Dreamers.
Sure. So the
Student
Dreamers,
thing.
absolutely. So the Dreamers are a group of undocumented students or young people, and basically, and we actually have a lot of Dreamers in our community at Mano in Round Lake and Waukegan, and basically it was a group of young people who were brought here at very young ages, before they were 16 years old, and so they're kids, right? Their parents brought them here because their parents wanted to seek more opportunity, but unfortunately at the time that they were brought here, they didn't have permission or legal status to come in. And so these are young people who are undocumented, were brought from a young age. So the reason behind potentially giving them status is that you can't blame kids for coming here because they're kids, right? Their parents brought them here. But what arose is that a lot of these kids were, enrolling in U.S. high schools. They were wanting to go to college or get a job after college, but they couldn't because they were undocumented and they didn't have status. They didn't have a social security number to work, and they couldn't receive financial aid because they didn't have a social security number. And so a lot of these kids were, faced with this kind of dead end because they didn't have any options after they graduated. Because, K through 12 education is compulsory, but after that, you don't have to continue. But kids either go on to university or they go into some other training program or they work. But these kids couldn't. And so across the country, these young people organized to ask their elected officials to help them pass a new law called the DREAM Act to help them have a special category of immigration status, so they actually could work, they actually could continue studying. The law never passed, but what ended up happening was that the President Obama in 2012 passed what's called an executive order, presidential executive order authorizing the Dreamers, and it's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is basically, it's not giving them a path to residency and it's not giving them a path to citizenship, but what it gives them is protection from deportation, and it gives them the right to work.
And it's called Deferred Action?
For Childhood Arrivals, or we call it DACA, D-A-C-A.
Childhood Arrivals.
Exactly. So it's that piece that those kids kind of arrived when they were kids. They can't really blame the kids because they were brought here before they could, make decisions on their own, kind of thing. But now they're just in this really tough situation because they can't work, they can't study.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you understand the difference? I don't know if the immigration, the INS, what they used to call it,
right,
the Immigration Naturalization Services,
sure,
if it still exists. I know that they had some signs up and then they took them down and just changed it to Immigration Services,
sure,
or things like that. Can you explain
sure,
if there has been any changes?
Absolutely. There has been a lot of changes, and the kind of thing that changed everything was September 11th. They did a lot of changes after September 11th and with the Patriot Act and all this kind of stuff. And so the overarching umbrella organization is the Department of Homeland Security. So that's the big picture agency, right? And under that is Customs and Border Patrol, which is like the people who are along the borders and in all the ports. There's also ICE, which I think is probably what you're referring to with INS. ICE is Immigration's Customs Enforcement, and so this is like the law enforcement. Yeah, this is the law enforcement mechanism of Department of Homeland Security, and so those officers are the ones that would go arrest somebody, things like that. And then there's also USCIS, which is, you're going to test me on my acronyms, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and that's where, like, when we submit applications for citizenship, we submit it. They're like the administrative arm that processes all the requests and things like that. And so those are different components under the Department of Homeland Security.
Now, the people that come to your agency, the agency for Mano,
sure,
are they challenged with the documentation part
absolutely,
of the process of being in the United States?
Yes, absolutely. So what we see is that a lot of people don't retain their documents, and so immigration is heavy evidence-based administrative law, and so when we submit an application for somebody to request their residency or to request DACA or to request citizenship, they have to submit a significant amount of documentation to prove their eligibility for all of whatever the criteria is, right? And that's a variety of different types of documents. It's going to be documents from here, but it's also going to be documents from their home country, which is another challenging thing because in some of these countries, the documents aren't as well kept as they are here. And so we have to make a lot of requests, international requests, to get copies of documents.
Is there a fee attached to all of this process?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If they have to do any type of court dispositions request or anything like that, they have to go to whatever county that they were involved with the court in to get court dispositions. You know, marriage certificates, birth certificates. Sometimes you have to get copies of like bank statements, utility statements to prove that you lived here, that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of documents that go into it, and it's a lot of like legwork to go around and collect all the documents.
Okay, so Mano helps with that process?
We absolutely do. And so we have an immigration legal services program, and we are recognized by the Department of Justice's Board of Immigration Appeals to do the immigration law work without the presence of an attorney. And so we have accredited staff members who are accredited by the Board of Immigration Appeals to actually prepare and submit the applications and to represent our clients in front of Homeland Security.
So we shouldn't be angry. Well, most of the Americans, as you know, in Arizona and most of the borderline states are upset because undocumented immigrants are coming in.
Sure.
Not only from there, they got some that come from Canada.
Right.
But the difference is in Canada, they can cross over and there's no discrimination of sorts.
Because you can't tell the difference.
Right.
Right.
But you can't tell the difference.
Right.
But when you have someone from coming in from Mexico or other
Right.
nations, then it's a big hoopla about what's going on.
Right.
Not that I'm saying one is better than the other.
Right,
I'm
of
just
course.
saying why is that?
Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head because people have certain biases, I think. And sometimes when it's visual, it's more, people react more. But as, you know, Dr. Brooks pointed out before, you know, immigrants come from every different country. And so there's undocumented immigrants from everywhere.
From everywhere.
Because you can become undocumented by passing the border, like without permission, or you can become undocumented if you came with a visa and expired. Because if your visa expires, then you're undocumented. And so a little known fact is we actually have a significant portion of undocumented Irish immigrants who came with tourist visas or some kind of temporary work visas and they stayed, and so now they're undocumented. But like you said, I mean, if you saw an Irish undocumented and then a Mexican undocumented, you might see a difference in terms of how people treat.
And that's the propaganda that I feel that they put out there, is that they want you to visually discriminate or be biased.
It's certainly a very
So
charged.
when you're talking about undocumented, it's the whole spectrum of it.
That's
it's
right.
just not one certain people or some certain whatever.
I wonder what the Indians were saying, is that all these undocumented people coming over here.
Yes.
You ever thought the word?
Sometimes people forget about history, right?
Right.
So we all came over here undocumented.
Well, could you explain what President Obama's executive order was about? Because I want to be clear, and then you seem to can explain it.
Absolutely, it would be my pleasure. So I mentioned the DACA one in 2012, right? And so that was one of the first presidential executive orders for President Obama related to immigration. In 2014, November 2014, he did another presidential executive order. And so basically, the kind of background context of this is that it's been an immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform via policy change or congressional action, you know, has been on campaign platforms, has been a topic of conversation for a really long time. And so when the president came into his second term, he said he committed to having comprehensive immigration reform. That didn't really work out. He was having some challenges with Congress. And so he kind of gave Congress an ultimatum in June 2014 and said, if you guys don't do something, I'm going to do what's in my power to do it through the executive order. And so what the president ended up doing was he expanded the original DACA from 2012. So if you remember, it's for people under the age of, that were brought here under the age of 16. The 2012 DACA was only for people between or up to 30 years old. And so if you were 35 and brought here before you were 16, you don't qualify. And so it had an age cap. It was also a specific date range of when you came in order to qualify. And so there was all these kind of qualifying criteria. And so what President Obama did was he expanded the criteria. And so he opened the dates up a little bit more to offer more leeway. And then he also took off the 30-year-old cap so that people who were brought here before they were 16 but were older than 30 could qualify. And then in addition to that, he also, in his executive order, included something called DAPA, which is Deferred Action for Parents of Americans.
Acronyms all over.
I know. I don't expect you to. Yeah, so DAPA. DAPA is for parents of U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents, undocumented parents. And so if it's for parents who have been here for a certain period of time, are undocumented, and either have a legal permanent resident child or a U.S. citizen child. And then with DACA and DAPA, you can't have any type of major criminal convictions. You have to pass through a background check. And you also have to show that you have good moral character, which is a requirement for immigration.
Wow.
And one of the really interesting things about DAPA and DACA, the way that they structured them legally very carefully and intentionally is to not encourage people to continue to come thinking that they'll be able to come and get DACA or DAPA. And so he has these age and date ranges that kind of controls for not letting people who just passed the border to be able to qualify, if that makes sense, because they didn't want it to be an incentive for more people to come,
right,
which has been a major criticism of his actions, but it's actually not really tied to that. And so people who just come over are still actually a priority for deportation.
What about the health care benefits?
Sure.
How would they, that's another challenging experiences for.
Absolutely. So the Affordable Care Act obviously changed the healthcare landscape. And so with the Affordable Care Act, it mandates that people have health insurance of some kind. Yes. There are certain exceptions to that mandate. Undocumented immigrants are not required to comply with that because they're not considered to have legal presence.
Okay.
So undocumented people are not required to apply for Obamacare. But other categories of immigrants, if you're a U.S. citizen, you're required. If you're a legal permanent resident, which is basically kind of like the step below being a U.S. citizen, you can qualify for Medicaid if you've been here for, I think, 5 years or more, and your income meets the Medicaid requirements. Or you can also do the private marketplace and potentially for a subsidy if you've been here for a certain period of time. Other people with like temporary visas, like students, or there's like different work visas that are temporary, they're not required to get they're not required to get health insurance.
Wow.
The biggest challenge, I would say, is that so there's all these people who are undocumented or have temporary statuses, and they're not required to have health insurance. But with Obamacare and Affordable Care Act, a lot of the free clinics closed because people assumed, well, everybody's going to have health insurance now, so why do we need free clinics? But what we've seen is there's still this like significant chunk of individuals who need free or reduced price health care, who no longer, or have fewer options at this point. And so a lot of times people who don't have health insurance have to go to public health departments, or if you've seen kind of these little clinics pop up, like that are urgent care clinics and stuff like that. They're all, or Walgreens has clinics, stuff like that. Yeah, and so people go through that. But I think what ends up happening is that it costs more for them and they go less frequently. And so we always talk about preventative care, right? Not waiting until it's a crisis and you have to go to the emergency room or whatever. But if people don't have health insurance, it's more costly for them, and so they're going to go less, right? And then they end up in the emergency room. And what happens if they can't pay that bill, then that's basically kind of, we pay for it, the rest of us.
And those clinics are limited.
Exactly.
They don't even do full services.
Exactly. That's right. And sometimes you really still need insurance to even go to those clinics too.
Right,
so,
now they do ask for insurance.
Exactly. So there's limitations. I mean, the Affordable Care Act brought a lot of more people into the healthcare system, which is really important that people have access, but in year 2, we're still kind of working out some of the things that are missing.
It was a narrow decision. A lot of Supreme Court decisions are narrow about supporting President Obama's decision, executive order.
For Affordable Care Act or for immigration?
What? Oh, the Affordable Care Act.
Yes, I saw that. And so from what I understand, the subsidies, because it was something about the economic subsidies that you can get, those were upheld. And so, that's good in the sense that we can continue with the system that's been set up, because now we've been 2 years into enrollment and things like that, and work with the federal government, the state of Illinois, to get as many people enrolled as possible. And so Mano is actually an enrollment site for the Affordable Care Act.
Wow,
we had two state certified counselors to help people enroll in either Medicaid or the private insurance market. And we work directly with the state of Illinois Department of Public Health, the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, and also the Lake County Health Department to get as many people enrolled as possible. So it was a great experience, and we continue to kind of help people get enrolled so they can get covered.
Well, speaking about immigrants now, what numbers are we talking about? I hear it's about 12 million undocumented Hispanics in the country?
Not just Latinos. It's 12 million undocumented immigrants from any country, total.
Okay.
And so that's at the national level. So 12 million, between 12 and 14, depending on who you talk to, million undocumented people. Wow. The executive order of President Obama that was passed, or that he signed in 2014, would cover around 40% of those undocumented people. And so that would give that 40% of those people protection from deportation, and it would also give them work permits so they could work legally. And then those work permits are renewable so long as the executive order exists. In Lake County, it's estimated that there's around 39,000 undocumented people living in Lake County, Illinois.
Wow.
And the great numbers are coming each year, too. Mentioned about what, 400,000?
No, so 400,000 is how many people are deported every year.
Deported, okay.
So this is like an interesting data point, right? Because there's around 12, 13 million undocumented people in the country who are potentially deportable, right? Because they're undocumented. But the U.S. government only has the resources and the capacity to deport 400,000 a year. So if you look at 12 million versus 400,000, and so one of the major parts of President Obama's order that's talked about a little bit less is he actually instructed the Homeland Security to reprioritize who they focus their efforts on deporting, right? So if you can only deport 400,000 people, are we going to deport moms with kids, or are we going to deport people who are threats to national security, right? And so it's like, look at our limited resources, because we all know that government resources are limited, right? Whether it's the state of Illinois or the U.S. government, whoever. And we need to use those resources to achieve our objectives in the most frugal and efficient way, right? And so focusing on people who are threats. So he kind of recategorized who is considered a priority for deportation.
Yeah, well, that's very important. The information is very important, because we get misconceptions and misinformation about what his executive order was about. And I would like to know, do you have to go on the White House website, or do you have this information on your website as to where they can find this executive order and how it's written, you know, and what it means to the immigrants?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it's not on Mano's website, but it is on uscis.gov, which is the Department of Homeland Security agency that manages all of this. So uscis.gov. And then there's another website called Illinois is Ready, and it's IL and then is ready.org. .org. And that is a website that is a product of the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, which is a nonprofit organization, a coalition of statewide ethnic and immigrant agencies throughout the state of Illinois. And Mano is a partner in that coalition. And they do a lot of programming and organizing and policy advocacy around immigrant issues. And so they've been really leaders in collecting all this information, exactly what you said, packaging it so people can understand it. You know, they have it in like 5 different languages or something like that to speak to all the different, you know, significant
like all of the immigrants
exactly,
across
because
the board.
Exactly, because it's not just Latinos, it's not just Latin Americans. You know, there needs to be language accessibility for all the groups that live here. And so Illinois is actually ahead of the curve nationally in terms of getting ready for the implementation of this administrative relief, which has been delayed since by court proceedings and lawsuits.
Well, between me and you, Megan, I'm glad that you're explaining all of this, because it's been targeted with the Hispanics being the largest immigration, immigrants coming in. And whenever you hear the word deportation, that's what you zoom in on. But it's the broad spectrum of immigrants that come in that are not documented.
That's right.
And your organization helps them prepare, process, so that they can become U.S. citizens?
When they're eligible. I mean, the really important thing to know about immigration policy is that not everybody is automatically eligible to become a U.S. citizen. And not everybody is automatically eligible to become a resident either. And so what happens is that people who are undocumented have very few options of getting their status normalized. And so from changing from undocumented to something else. It's just because they don't have the legal options to do so. So it's really challenging, because a lot of people assume that you can just become a U.S. citizen. People say just get in line, but it's like doors are closed, if that makes sense. And so, you know, people who come here without permission, and especially if they came without permission, then they're considered to have like immigration violations too, because they entered without permission, and so that can actually be held against them if and when they ever made an application to become a U.S. resident or something like that.
So the executive order protects them from that, depending on the age group.
Depending, for DACA, it does. It would give them almost like a temporary status. It doesn't give them a path to residency. It doesn't give them a path to citizenship, but what it protects them from is deportation, which is really important because, you know, they can't. And it also gives them the right to work, which is important too, because for families, obviously. And these are people who have been here for a long time too.
But that was going to be my next question. If they're undocumented. They have protection of not being deported. When do they ever become?
That's a really great question. You know, I think that, and I can't, you know, speak to President Obama's psyche behind this, but I think that the idea is this would give some temporary relief until Congress really took on comprehensive immigration reform through policy, in which case one would think that that would be addressed. Because with these executive orders, like, people can only continue to get their work permits or continue to have this protection while the order exists, if that makes sense. And so right now it's on hold because it's in court. You know, Congress tried a couple of times to, like, through certain administrative channels, kind of cancel it or stop it. And then there's always this possibility that a new president could come in and just cancel the executive order too.
And where does it leave your organization? Do you still continue to do what you're doing if that should happen?
Well, you know, what's interesting about it is that I think that a lot of people became really scared. So when he first signed the order, there was this lag in terms of implementation. That's a legal lag that was happening, and so it gave everybody else some time, organizations like ours, to educate the community, get them prepared, get documents together. But what ended up happening, what we saw in the media, is a lot of conflicting information, and so people were saying, well, you know, Congress is going to cancel it, so why should I apply? Like, I'm better just staying below the radar. I'm not going to give the U.S. government my information, my name, where I live, if Congress is just going to cancel it, and then they're going to come and deport me. Exactly. So we saw a lot of fear in the community, and we still do. And so while right now the order is in court still with a lawsuit, we continue to do educational outreach to make sure that people know the status, because there's also a lot of fraud out there of people taking advantage and saying, oh, I'll help you fill out paperwork for this, but no application exists. You know, there's no paperwork to fill out, but there's people charging people money to fill it out.
And we heard that was one of the other larger scams.
That's right.
Even when they file for unemployment, which you do help with them with unemployment insurance. What was your experiences with that?
Sure. So we, in addition to our immigration legal services, we have a program or initiative that's called Information Referral. And so Mano, actually the first kind of function that we ever performed was like an information center. And so whenever people would have whatever question, or they needed to get connected to some resources, they would come to Mano and say, I have this issue, or I need this information, and we would direct them. That was at the beginning. We've since taken on services of helping people with public benefits, different applications, so unemployment insurance. We help people with Medicaid, with All Kids, which is insurance for children at the state of Illinois, with food assistance, temporary food assistance, stuff like that. And so we actually serve a really key role in other organizations like Mano because we help with DHS, IEDS. IDES. I knew I was going to mix it up.
That's another.
We try to help because we actually can provide interpretation and translation services that, you know, some of the workers at IDHS, they're not all bilingual, right? And so we help kind of facilitate the conversation between the state of Illinois employees and the applicants. Because in addition to the language, there's also like these cultural barriers about how to interact with the system, right? And so we try to facilitate that access.
Well, I would like to clarify that IDES stands for Illinois Department of Employment Security.
Thank you.
Which is where they file for the unemployment and have job services.
That's correct.
And they still have challenges there because of the language in some of the offices.
That's right.
You know,
That's
so
right.
You're going to be most needed.
Yes. Well, and actually, unfortunately, right now, the program or the grant that funded our work with helping with the facilitation of benefits is actually not included in the budget. Well, the state of Illinois doesn't have a budget right now, so we know that, right? And the fiscal year started last week, and so right now they're operating without a budget. But previously, we were funded under the Illinois Department of Human Services, a line item that was Immigration Services line item. And under that, there was a program called Immigrant Family Resource Program. And that's the program that we help with translation and interpretation, and we help with actually educating people about how the system works. Okay. That particular grant for immigrant services organizations like Mano was suspended by the governor on April 3rd. Of this past year. Yes. The existing award was suspended, and so we basically had to stop services on April 3rd. It was later restored because they came across some extra revenue or something like that, and so they restored it. But right now, it's uncertain what's going to happen in this current fiscal year with the current budget. That's something that has a major deficit, right? And so they're trying to figure out where to do cuts, but also where to add more revenue and stuff like that. And so we basically, at this point, are trying to provide some of those services, but we also, you know, we can't provide the same services without the funding, right? And so it's a challenge of.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have a board of directors. I guess they would be involved in fundraising activities and so forth in addition to programming. Right. But is there a large board of directors that you have?
So we have a board of directors of 10 community leaders. One of them was one of the founders of Mano. So we're very lucky to have this person still involved. And then we have other community leaders from the Lake County and Brown Lake area specifically. And so it'll be people, business people, corporate people. We have 2 people from Abbott on our board, from ComEd. You know, small business owners, people in the education field. And so we have a really diverse group of board of directors, and you're right that they're involved in fundraising for the organization. I think a goal in many nonprofit agencies is to try and build your individual fundraising base, so you don't have to rely on government grants all the time, because there's a lot of instability sometimes in government grants from any, you know, any state or the federal government, because you just don't know what the revenue is going to be like. And so if you can develop people who are essentially investors in your community and investors in your organization, you know, there's more of a fruitful relationship, if that makes sense. Makes sense.
And you mentioned about the number of volunteers you have too, though,
yes.
right? That's,
yes. So we have around 30 regular volunteers.
Oh, okay.
That includes the board, because it is an all-volunteer board. Right. And then we have an additional 15 community health workers who are community members who we train on different health topics like asthma or diabetes or heart disease. And then they go out and leverage their own social networks, their family members, their coworkers, their peers, and do small education sessions throughout the community. They do it in people's homes, they do it at library, they do it at schools, they do it you know, in an apartment complex, like laundromats, just to get to as many people as possible to share information about health, you know, symptoms, what to watch out for. Then also, if you feel like you need a screening or you need treatment, you can go to this place or this place. And then we also have another 5 kindergarten readiness tutors who work with 3 to 5-year-olds and their parents to prepare them to enter kindergarten ready with the skills that they need to start at grade level. Because United Way of Lake County did a survey probably in like 2006, and they found that the majority of the students in Waukegan, North Chicago, and Round Lake are not starting kindergarten with the basic skills. Wow. And so what happens if you start behind, obviously you continue to fall behind. Yeah, exactly. And so if, you know, you struggle throughout your whole academic career, all through school. And we've actually found in our community, 80% of the kids that we work with, the pre-kindergartners, never go to any formal preschool. And so kindergarten is the first time that they're ever actually in school. Wow. And so we're trying to fill that gap by having these kindergarten readiness initiatives to help the kids be exposed to, you know, get to know their numbers, their letters, their colors, shapes, how to cut, use scissors, stuff like that, how to write their names. You know, some of the kids don't have any books at home. And so we try to expose them, working directly with the kids, but we also do a lot of parent coaching, because sometimes the parents feel like their education is limited, so they feel like, how can I be the teacher? Or I don't speak English, how am I going to teach my kid? But we know that, you know, education, some would argue, starts when the baby's in the belly of the mom, right? In terms of getting the kid ready for the world and being exposed to different things. And so we try and work with the parents so the parents can really be the child's first teacher at home even.
Wow.
You know, there have been statistics that show that if a child is having difficulty by 3rd grade, right, 3rd grade, they're going to have difficulty all the way through each year to get further and further behind. Yeah. By the time they get in high school, they're not going to be able to compete with algebra, geometry, and this type of thing. And sooner or later, they're going to drop out. And once they drop out, they in the community gonna do things that cause them to be incarcerated, and then there's another ball game. They're building more and more prisons, you know,
Right.
and we have some youngsters prefer to go to prison, have a place they have a place to stay, they have eaten,
Right.
or this type of thing, which is the thinking is.
Right.
But third grade is very important.
The
And
third grade reading
education is
levels,
very-
I hear, are like one of the major measures to see where kids are going to be, you know, in a couple of years. And I mean, we know that, you know, people who are incarcerated, that is a game changer for people, because once you have a record, you know, it's really hard.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's hard to get it expunged. You know?
Exactly, or get a job, and then, you know, getting arrested has immigration consequences as well. And so being arrested for certain types of crimes can make you deportable.
Right, right.
Wow.
Nina, we are very fortunate to have with us Megan. She was recommended to me by Cynthia Vargas. She was the communications manager for the Lake County State's Attorney's Office.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And she highly
wonderful.
recommended you, and
you.
I'll take the report back.
Yes.
Okay, I hope I did well.
Yes, you did.
Thank
Lake
you.
County
We have the tape.
be the judge, you know. Lake
Yes.
County is
Thanks.
very, very benefiting from the information that you have promulgated.
Well, and for your show,
Yeah,
so thank
yeah.
you for providing the forum.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, when you have the clients that come in, what are your successes that you can share with us
Sure.
of any of the immigrants that
Absolutely.
were in these challenges that
Absolutely.
came out positive?
That's a wonderful question. So we have annually helped more than 150 people become U.S. citizens, and so that's significant.
Wow.
Because now these are individuals who can vote. They're individuals who can run for office. Typically, they say that U.S. citizens make around 8% more in income, and so it also has an economic benefit for families, but also for communities. We've also seen in our health program that people leave our health education sessions knowing more about diabetes, more how to manage their diabetes. And we actually, working with UIC and with Rosalind Franklin, do clinical tests of people's A1C levels. We do it when they first start the program and then when they finish the program, and we've actually seen a decrease in A1C levels, which is significant because that helps people manage their diabetes better. We also have seen them increase their physical activity. And so these are things that are outcomes of the classes that we offer, but have long-term implications, right?
Okay. And when you say A1C
A1C is like blood sugar testing type thing
blood
for
sugar.
diabetes patients. Exactly. And so our diabetes program is a 10-week-long program that they come in and learn. People who are already diagnosed with type 2 diabetes come in, and our community health workers work with them on how to manage their diabetes and how to improve their lifestyle. So that now you have diabetes, but that doesn't mean you just have to let it go and just continue to get sicker or things like that. You can actively take control of your health.
Well, you may have mentioned it before, but what is your service area for the Mano?
Okay, geographic service area?
Geographic
Absolutely.
service
So we are by mission a Lake County-wide organization, and so our mission is to serve underserved and income families throughout Lake County. The majority of our clients do come from the Round Lake area or the western part of Lake County, so Round Lake Beach, Round Lake Park, Round Lake Heights. We also see a lot of people from Fox Lake, Lake Villa, Wakanda. We are seeing a lot of people from Mundelein. But we do receive people from all over Lake County. And we actually see a lot of people from McHenry County as well, because there are basically no services in the eastern part of McHenry County where it borders with Lake. And so we get a lot of clients from McHenry.
So there's only one office?
Correct. So we have our office in Round Lake Park, which we have our 4 programs, our Healthy Families program, which is health education and health access, Productive Parents, which is adult education and job readiness, Successful Children, which is the pre-K initiative, and then the Immigration Legal Services. And something that's new, I'm happy to announce, is that we are actually working with the Zion Elementary School District, and we are going to have 1 full-time staff person in Zion as well, in one of the school buildings. And so this is a very exciting venture because we're able to serve another community that is really committed, specifically the district, to offering family services through the school district. And so we'll have a full-time person in Zion starting this summer.
So you're like a spider. You got the centralized place, and
We're
you send everybody out.
Yeah, we kind of have the tentacles
Send
out.
everybody
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
But
'Cause
you need another facility.
yeah, we
actually.
absolutely do. We
hope
absolutely
that
do.
happens for you.
Thank you.
Maybe they'll hear this show and get some.
We are definitely looking into
funding.
facilities, planning. One of the things we're trying to do in the meantime is, I'm sure you're all aware that transportation is a huge barrier for low-income people in Lake County, and so one of the ways that we try to adjust that is we try to do a lot of off-site programming, and so we work closely with the Round Lake Library, we work with the Round Lake Beach Police Department. We're in conversations with some other area libraries to hold some of our classes there, so instead of people having to make their way all the way to Mano, they can just go to their local library and get the classes, but we would offer the services.
That's great.
Because sometimes libraries have a lot of space, but they don't have the staff or the programming, and so it's like a perfect match.
Right.
In a few minutes we have left, I know you want to talk about, we do need a comprehensive immigration reform, right? And we could talk all day about that, right? But you think we ever get a comprehensive reform?
I don't know. That's a good question. You know, I know that our local congressman is very vocally supportive of that.
Political, I guess, too, right?
Yeah, I won't say too much about the politics of it, but what I can say is that we see every day that immigration status is a lot of people's biggest barrier to success. And so if we can move the process forward to make it easier for people and to figure out a way to deal with the fact that we do have 12 million people in this country who are undocumented. And that's not good for anybody. Regardless of what the solution is, there's a problem, right? And so wherever you fall on the side of the problem, you know, we have to figure out something that works for families and works for our country.
This is a global economy, and we have a problem with inequality and poverty all over, right?
Right. It's true.
It's global.
And poverty is actually on the rise in suburbs too. And so that's a nationally documented trend right now that, you know, before people associate poverty with urban city centers. But now the Brookings Institution says that that poverty is actually increasing at a faster rate in the suburbs than it is in central cities. There's still more poor people, like numbers-wise, in central cities, but the rate of poverty is actually increasing more in suburban communities.
I try to tell our 2% that controls the economy that I have never seen a Brinks truck behind a hearse yet. Yeah, they can't take it with them. It's going to the grave with them, but it stays there, you know. But I understand some people like to be buried with it, you know. But
there's a lot of passing on of wealth, right?
Yeah. But it also helps with the concept that just because someone lives in the suburb don't mean that they're better off.
That's right.
Or that if they live in the urban areas that they're worse off.
That's right. Well, and actually in this region we're seeing a lot of people being priced out of the city of Chicago and actually moving to Lake County to find affordable housing.
Yes.
And so
and the southern suburbs also.
That's exactly right. Even DuPage County. I mean, and so one of the biggest challenges with that increasing suburban poverty, or what we're calling the suburbanization of poverty, is that the suburbs don't have the social service infrastructure that the city of Chicago has, for example, and so we have fewer agencies with fewer services. We're more spread out. Transportation's a huge barrier if you don't have a car, and so it's our challenge as a sector, and even in Lake County, to adapt to that, to make sure we meet the needs of the residents that live here in Lake County.
It's a challenge for those that are living in suburbs of moving back into the inner city.
Right.
Because of transportation costs and so forth.
Transportation costs are high.
Do you have any time for leisure time activities?
All of this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things that I really enjoyed and socially is just volunteering and doing things with other people, and that's kind of how I connect to people in the community. You know, I live in Waukegan, and I'm very active in things with Waukegan. I'm active in the Downtown Association Waukegan Main Street to revitalize the downtown and lakefront. I'm on the board of directors. And so, you know, I don't know, I've just always been drawn to community work, and so it's fun. And even my job, I like what I do, and so sometimes it's hard to, like, just go home.
We're having an education in it also. You educated yourself.
It helps, yes.
Yes, and it helps you transfer it over.
Absolutely.
I wish all executive directors, most of them, would do half of what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
It would be better.
They work very hard. We all work very hard.
Yes.
Well, you have a wealth of background, and I think Nina shared with our audience some of the things that Lake County Planning Department, the United Way of Lake County, University of Illinois Chicago, and now Mano. So being bilingual is an asset too, though, right? Because we have to communicate, like Waukegan is probably in the school system about 70% Hispanics in the school
It might be more. The Round Lake School District is 70%. I'm not sure about Waukegan. Waukegan as a city is 55% Latino, but I venture to say that the school system is probably a little bit more Latino than the overall city because of the age demographics.
So those that don't know you know how to speak Spanish. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. And I tell everybody, they look at you, oh, you bilingual. Yeah, I tell them poquito.
Okay, poquito.
There you go. You're confusing them. You're getting it all right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're very fortunate to have with us exemplary person, as I mentioned, Megan McKenna-Mejia. All right, let me practice here. Yeah. She's the Executive Director of Mano and Mano Family Resource Center, and she's been sharing with us information concerning the challenges of immigration, about the myths of undocumented people here in Lake County. And we have to remember that the Indians were the first settlers in this country. Well, they are native Americans. Yes. And we all came over here on different ships. Some were brought over here, and some came over in different ships. And England sent shiploads to different parts of the world, you know. But we all, ladies and gentlemen, are in the same boat together now. By the way, Mano and Mano, I want to mention, is located at, is that 6 East Main Street?
That's right. In
Round Lake Park, Illinois. And if anyone want to call, can he call 847-201-1521?
That is our main line.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Community Forum. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks Sr., your host.